you, Sue, for the introduction. Again, my name is Ian Pemberton. I'm Managing Director of a company called Human Focus. My background is I'm an ergonomist or human factors specialist, and I've worked in the space of looking at how do we develop skilled behaviour in the workplace for about 30 years now. And my focus has been on how we reduce human error, how we prevent accidents. And today I'm just going to share a few of the core principles that I've come across that I've found to be very helpful. And I wanted to talk to you about so-called high reliability organizations, or as I call it, high reliability safety, and how these principles have helped businesses to achieve not just good safety standards, but actually world-class business performance. So let's get on with it. I've got a couple of three case studies of high reliability organizations. So here's the first one, which is Alcoa. It's a global manufacturer of aluminium. They smelt it. So it's a high hazard environment, high risk environment. And this chap over on the right, Paul O'Neill, took over as CEO of Alcoa in 1988. And when he took over, Alcoa was a moribund, very traditional manufacturer, losing money. It had all sorts of problems. And on his first day in the post, he actually had a meeting on Wall Street to financial investors. And what he said was, in his opening address, is, I want to talk to you today about safety. And the room literally went silent, because this was a Wall Street investors meeting. Why on earth was this guy talking about safety? So one of the people in the room, one of the analysts, put their hand up, trying to get the meeting back on track, started to ask questions about stock levels at one of their aeronautical divisions. And Paul O'Neill was having none of it. He said, look, if you want to know how this business is performing, you need to look at our safety figures, because if we can't do it for safety, you should be damn skeptical that we could do it for anything else. And he went on to describe to the meeting how he wanted his legacy when he left Alcoa, that this was an organization that had, frankly, a very poor safety performance. He wanted it to become one of the safest in the world. And literally half the room stood up and stampeded out, and they were getting on the phone saying, sell your shares quickly. They've put this crazy hippie in charge and he's going to kill the company. However, when he left the organization in 2000, these were the statistics. Their injury rate had fallen dramatically from 1.86 per, I believe, 100,000 hour worked to 0.2, and it continued to fall after he left. So they became a super safe place to work despite the high risk. What he also achieved was a remarkable commercial turnaround success. Over the course of his time there, the value of Alcoa shares increased by $27 billion. So it was a remarkable success, both from a safety and commercial perspective. So when we drill down into just one plant, Cressona, Pennsylvania, this is what was achieved. The injury rates were significantly cut. They redesigned workflows, they improved equipment, they developed better work methods, they reduced packaging costs. All of these things impacted upon safety. And overall, over that decade or so, there was an 87% improvement in productivity. So how did he achieve this? How did Paul O'Neill actually get these remarkable results? Well, he basically implemented a world-class near-miss reporting system. He went around the entire organization. He went to all 350 manufacturing plants around the world, gathered the workforce together on each plant and said, look, If we identify a safety issue, we're going to fix it, and we're going to fix it straight away, as fast as is humanly possible. We're not going to budget for it. Whatever it takes, we're going to fix it. And he even went as far as saying, and if it doesn't happen to the frontline workers, here is my home phone number. Give me a call and I'll make sure it does. So this was absolute top level leadership, and it demonstrates some key principles of what is known as high reliability principles. I just want to go past this slide onto this slide here. We'll come back to these. So these are the HRO principles that researchers, high reliability organization principles that have been found that distinguish organizations that, despite having very high levels of risk in their operations, are able to achieve remarkable standards of safety. And the original organizations that the researchers studied included the American Navy, and in particular aircraft operations such as you see here. And they identified 5 core principles, which are preoccupation with failure, reluctance to simplify, commitment to resilience, sensitivity to operations, and deference to expertise. So preoccupation with failure means that there is a almost a supreme level of dedication in seeking out where are the problems and what can we fix, where can we improve. I know a lot of organizations say they do this, but HROs do it really, really well, and they never stop. And they build what's called a sense of unease to do this, where everybody is continuously working on the mindset of things are about to go wrong. We need to discover where they are before they do. Reluctance to simplify means that when they do identify a problem, they don't immediately jump to a solution. They stay in the question, they analyze it, and they try to learn as much as they can. And as we'll see, they use what's called systems thinking to do that. Commitment to resilience means that they understand that you cannot predict in advance all hazards. So they build in within their system the capability for the organization to respond to problems as they are happening. So they give their people soft skills to be able to identify and manage problems. Sensitivity to operations, very linked to this with preoccupation with failure. Sensitivity to operations mean that they're able to, that as you go up the organization, they know, managers at various levels up, they know what is happening at the sharp end. So they've got high levels of psychological safety. They encourage a reporting culture where people feel that it is safe to say, I've just nearly made a mistake, it nearly caused an accident, and they get meaningful reporting coming through. And finally, deference to expertise. This is a key one. So this is about gaining the active participation of frontline workforce, because they are the experts. They know what is happening on a daily basis. But in HROs, they defer to that frontline expertise. So if somebody on the front line says, there is a problem here and we need to stop, there's no questions asked. They are treated with respect, they are listened to, and they act on that information. That is deference to expertise. So if we think about these HRO principles in relation to Alcoa, you can see many of these principles in action, but a number in particular. Preoccupation with failure. So you saw there the CEO providing supreme leadership and going into every plant saying, we need to be focused on where things can go wrong. You need to be reporting these issues. You need to be, solving these problems, and we're going to fix them when you do. That is preoccupation with failure in action. Sensitivity to operations, actually encouraging an environment where it's safe to report, and in fact where that reports are celebrated. And you saw supreme deference to expertise, frontline involvement in that whole process. So there's one example of an HRO in action. Here's another one, Toyota. Toyota say they have two main pillars upon which their success is built. They are the world's preeminent car manufacturer. And these are Kaizen, the process of continuous improvement, and two, respect for people. These are very HRO-based principles if you think about it. Respect for people very much is a nod towards deference to expertise, sensitivity to operations, and Kaizen very much around the preoccupation with failure. So in 2007, Toyota posted record profits and at that point became the world's top manufacturer. And then this happened. This man and his family was traveling along in a Toyota Lexus, and he called a emergency motorway control center saying, I've got no brakes, and my car is going over 100 miles an hour, can't stop, and the freeway is coming to an end. We need to hold on and pray. And seconds after that phone call, his car crashed catastrophically, killing both himself and his family that you see there. So this was one of a number of fatal crashes that were linked to design defects in Toyota cars. And between 2009 and 2011, nearly 20 million vehicles were recalled because of various design defects to floor mats, brakes, accelerator pedals, and engine software. So how did one of the world's preeminent automotive company get into such a mess? Well, if we come back to the HRO principles and look at what the investigation found, and some of the things that Toyota executives said themselves. Well, let's think about preoccupation with failure. Toyota executives actually came out and very honestly said that they'd stopped this, they diminished this as a principle, and they said it was hubris born out of success. They felt that because they'd now become the world's preeminent car manufacturer, this was not something that they needed to continually be obsessed about and to continually strive after. And they said that this was a fallacy of centrality, which was basically at the senior level, if we're not getting any bad news, that must mean everything is okay. That's the fallacy of centrality, and it's usually the reverse is true. Sensitivity to operations. They started to blame many of these accidents on customer errors. They started to explain them away as being not something that they needed to worry about. It's something the customer's doing wrong. It's not our fault. Deference to expertise. They diminished that as a principle. The prevailing attitude from head office in Toyota was when comments were coming through from various parts of the organization, this is none of your business. We'll handle this at the top. Get on with your day job. Commitment to resilience. Toyota executive said, we did not do a very good job at sharing information around the organization, around the globe, and that's a key aspect of building a resilient organization. And a reluctance to simplify. They said that they focus far too narrowly on technical issues when you've got to look at the human as well as the technical issues. So happily, this story ends in a much more positive way. As a result of this, in 2011, Toyota launched a brand new mission statement, and they basically recommitted themselves to these HRO principles, where they decentralized authority, aka deference to expertise. They built smart teams with different disciplines within, and they built into that the voice of the customer database information coming back. All of these things were trying to build better preoccupation with failure and better sensitivity to operations. And they have now returned to a preeminent position. So that's a story of what can go wrong as well as what can go right. So here's a final case study, which is the American Navy Nuclear Reactor Division, which was established just after the Second World War by this chap here, a guy called Hyman Rickover. And Hyman Rickover became, in his day, a widely lauded celebrity, courted by American presidents, and he even got his face on the front of Time magazine. So why was he so famous? Well, since 1948, the American Navy Nuclear Reactor Division has launched something more than 200 atomic-powered ships, 30 different reactor designs, 500 reactor cores, and they have steamed over or traveled over 134 million miles. And in all that time, 5,700 reactor years, and in all that time, there hasn't been a single nuclear incident, which is just a remarkable level of safety performance, given the potential there for things to go wrong. So how did Rickover achieve this success? Well, this is a story, again, of high reliability organization principles. So one of his key insights was he created what he called a culture of learning. And in most organizations, this is how learning occurs. When there's successful performance, no questions are asked. And it's only when something goes wrong that a lesson is learned. So if you like, in most organizations, that's the sort of trajectory. When things go wrong, we learn and we make an improvement. What Hyman Rickover did was to say, we're going to learn not just from unsuccessful performance, we're going to learn from successful performance. And he called this discipline discovery. So when things go right, we need to understand why they go right, and we need to learn from it. Whether it goes wrong or right, we need to learn from it. And this was and is the learning trajectory he gets from this, this revised approach. So this is about focusing as much on successful performance as unsuccessful, which is a very safety to concept. So there's our third case study. One of the key insights to any, so you can see there, Alcoa, Toyota, the American Naval Nuclear Reactor Division. Key to all of those those high reliability principles is the ability for the organizations to learn and improve their performance, their safety related performance. And one of the key insights, this is a seminal book by Peter Senge, he called it the fifth discipline, the art and practice of organizational learning. And the fifth discipline that he identifies as being absolutely key to organizational learning is what's called systems thinking. So let's have a quick look at this. What is systems thinking, and how is this, or why is this so important to effective safety performance? So let's take this example. Here's a steam boiler, and how could we improve the safety of this steam boiler? Well, of course, we can improve safety by looking at the individual components of the steam boiler. So one obvious one would be the actual boiler itself. We could make the plates, the welds, much more robust so that it's able to stand greater pressure and is more reliable. So that's certainly one thing we could do. We could also start to look at safety systems. For example, we could put in a pressure release valve. So if the pressure gets too high, there's an automatic release. And indeed, these types of improvements to components in steam boilers have been very effective at improving safety. So, you know, back into the 20th century, this was a fairly, unfortunately, routine incident where steam engine boilers would just explode. It was a fairly common event, and now it's a pretty rare event, but steam boilers still explode. So the question is, why is that so, given that modern steam boilers are undoubtedly most of the time built to very high standards in terms of their individual components? Well, Jens Rasmussen was one of the founding fathers of modern safety 2 related principles and thinking. Was the first to point out that a pure focus on component related safety does not guarantee that the work system will be safe. And in fact, paradoxically, by just focusing on the component side of things, you can make the whole system less safe, not more safe. So let's take a look at this example and see why this might be so. So let's suppose we now have, because steam engines are not quite so common anymore, let's suppose we've got a steam boiler which is linked to a couple of large buildings to heat the buildings. And so there we have the steam boiler, and it's working well within its designed limits. So its limit is up here, and we have a well-trained boiler maintenance caretaker who has got, let's say, 20 years of experience in terms of managing this boiler and is highly expert. He understands all the little nuances, and he can just tell by the noise, the heat, the sound, all of these cues tell him when this boiler is working effectively. Now let's call this guy Bill, and let's say Bill is coming up to retirement age, and so Bill retires, and then as part of that, another building is added to the whole complex. So two things happen. We've now got our boiler running much closer to its designed safe limit, and Bill has disappeared. But the powers that be decide, well, do you know what? We don't need to replace Bill with full-time replacement because this boiler has run for decades without any problem. So what, we will replace Bill, but Bill will be now a Joe, and Joe is a part-time contractor, and Joe will come in intermittently to check everything is okay, it's all running. But Joe doesn't have the same level of understanding the technical skill of this boiler and how it works. And in fact, Joe is not there most of the time. And then one day, there is an unusually cold winter. So the temperature plummets, and it's a very cold patch. And our boiler is now tipped right onto the edge of its safe working limit. Now that's okay, because it's still just within what is acceptable, but the temperature dropped just that little bit more, and the release valve hasn't actually been serviced recently, and it's a bit sticky, and it fails to open. It fails to release that pressure, and then hey presto, the thing explodes. And unfortunately, because it's such a well-designed boiler with such a thick lining and such great welding, it doesn't just explode a bit, it's a catastrophic explosion because of the high pressure. So what this demonstrates is how effective organizational learning is reliant upon a systems-based approach, systems thinking. And when you start to look at things like accident investigations, near-miss reporting, all of these sorts of things, it's really, really important that those that are undertaking them have at least this kind of understanding of how the system works, and to be able to analyze what went wrong with the systems? Unfortunately, in my experience, in many organizations, the standard of learning that comes from these investigations is very much at the component-based level. Oh, well, the boiler release valve didn't release, so we need a better release valve. And it didn't go to the broader systemic issues. So if you want to go down, if you want to improve HRO capability within your organization, this capability, this systems related capability is absolutely essential. Another aspect of systems thinking then is the concept of what are called emergent processes. So within any system, there will be a property, a capability that you will get from the system that only comes when all the parts are working together. So if you think about a car, the emergent property, or one emergent property of a car, is it can get you from A to B, it can take you to where you want to go, and it can take you long distances very quickly. But that emergent property of that system only occurs when all the components are working together in sync. If you take the engine, for example, out of a car, then that emergent property completely disappears. So take this scenario. Let's say, right, we want to design the world's best car, the world's most effective car. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to go out into the open market and we're going to find the best components, the best body, the best engine, the best doors, the best wheels. We're going to look at Ferraris, Mercedes, Rolls-Royces, VWs, and so on. We're going to take the best components and we're going to put them together to build the world's best car. The question then is, what do you end up with? You don't even get a car. You get a complete mess. You get this Heath Robinson affair where the thing just doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? You don't get your emergent property, which is the car moving along the road. Why? Because the individual components do not work together. They're not designed to work together just by taking individual components and bolting them together. But again, unfortunately, in many organizations, on my travels, I see these individual, if you like, systems that have been designed, but without the bigger picture in mind. And worse still, nobody's been asking the question, what is the emergent property that we are seeking from this collection of system or systems? So here, are a few common systems that you will find in any organization, incident reporting, management briefings, risk assessments, inspections, online, offline training, work as done, operational standards, method statements, accident, incident reporting. And if you think about it, metaphorically, all of these different component systems should be talking to each other. They all influence each other. And you need to be thinking about how they do so. And also, what are the emergent properties that we are seeking to get from some of these? So let's just take one example, incident reporting. What is the emergent property we want to get from our incident reporting? Think about that. Well, you are possibly saying, well, we need to comply with statutory requirements. Okay, that's true. But beyond that, you're probably saying, well, we want to get learning. We want to learn, we want to improve. And certainly that is true. If that is the case, then why do you call it incident reporting? In fact, why do you call accident incident investigation, or why do commonly people call it so? If the stated emergent property aim of the system is to get learning, then why use the word investigation? If somebody says to you, I'm coming here today to investigate you. How do you feel about that? Nobody likes to be investigated. And in fact, investigations are typically embedded in a blame culture, in finger pointing, in finding out who was at fault, all of those connotations. If it's about learning, why not call it a learning review? Because that's the emergent property you're seeking to get. So what I'm pointing to is HROs are really good at this. They're really good at system thinking. They're really good at thinking about the emergent properties that they're seeking to get out of their management systems and the way they manage safety at the sharp end. So metaphorically, your car might look like this. It kind of works, but it's a Heath Robinson affair. But with systems thinking, your car might look like this. All kinds of new emergent properties are possible if you think in terms of systems and what we are trying to achieve as a result. So there it is. Thank you very much for inviting me today and giving me the opportunity to share some of these ideas and thoughts. I would be more than delighted to answer any questions, observations anybody has at this point. Are you still there, Sue?
I certainly am, Ian. Thank you ever so much for that. Really thought-provoking. We do have a couple of questions.
Okay.
So the first one is, how do you actually move towards this sort of systems thinking culture and the culture of HRO? Because obviously some businesses sort of lag behind, perhaps. And so how do you get that change of thought process?
It's a great question, and there's no single thing there that's going to be a magic bullet. I'd point to a number of things for you to consider. You think about to Paul O'Neill. I mean, there's a guy that clearly got it. And so from the CEO down, he was relentlessly, consistently preaching the message and showing the direction of travel. So if your senior leadership are not there and don't get this stuff and don't understand, they don't know what they don't know, then that's clearly a need that has to be addressed. You've got to have senior leadership. So, you know, we often talk about competence of people within organizations, and that often means frontline people, but competence of management from the very top down is also really, really important. So your senior leadership need to be, you know, their awareness needs to be raised about HRO principles, about systems thinking. And the really good news here is this is a focus on success, on positives. This is as you saw from Toyota, Alcoa, this stuff is not just about safety. Safety is the way they come into it, but it leads to world-class business performance as well. That's a really positive message to put across to senior leadership. So senior leadership enrollment is certainly one aspect. Another one I would point to is you need to look at the capabilities of your, who does your accident incident reporting and what is their competence. Again, as I go around on my travels, the competency of those undertaking accident incidents, near-miss reporting, investigations, because that's generally what they're called, it just doesn't cut it. And I also see, shall we remain nameless, but out there training programs that are, they're okay as a starting point, but really do not deliver the skill sets and the competency that you need for this HRO safety 2 kind of learning approach, looking at the broader systemic issues. And remember that a lot of the systems that you look at are complex, and the way you look at complex systems is completely different than the way you look at what are called complicated systems. So complex systems are non-linear, the relationships are shifting and changing. Complicated systems are linear and predictable. What I see out there in the vast majority of cases is accident investigations that are purely in the complicated zone. It's linear, and I'm not rubbishing that. If your problem is a machine that's broken down, that's very effective, and those are suitable and appropriate, but they're not appropriate to complex situations. So what I see is a big skill gaps in the complex zone. How do we deal with socio-technical complex systems? How do we understand them? How do we get better learning from that? It's very much safety to learning review, and there's a big skill gap there. So advanced accident investigation for better learning, particularly in complex systems, is another big need. So a couple of things to think about there.
Okay, thank you. And is there not also a sort of a mismatch between the type of language that we're using in sort of dealing with all of this?
Absolutely. As I kind of pointed out there, we know from system design there are leverage points that you can use to change systems, and the top two, certainly in the top five, but the top two probably, the number one is mindsets, people's mindsets, and the second one is the stated aim of the system, and they're kind of linked. So if you tell somebody the stated aim of this system is near miss reporting, I mean, what does that say to you, Sue? If this system is called near miss reporting, what does it say it's there to do?
To avoid the near misses, yeah.
To report. So if I fill in a report, I've reported, it's gone. Where's the learning in that? So what you end up with is people filling in lots of reports, and you may even have KPIs around, we need more reports, so people fill them in, and they're meaningless. But I've reported it, that's job done. If the stated aim of the system is to learn, then call it that. Don't call it a reporting system, call it a learning system. And the mindset has got to be, this is not about filling in report cards, this is about having meaningful conversations with your people. Okay, so you've just slipped up there. Okay, that's interesting. So what was going on there? Could you tell me more about that? And it's, what learning do we get out of that? And as a result of that, what have we done? How have we changed and improved? So it's about, the mindset is, this is about learning, this is about improving. And in order to do that, if I just fill in a card and gone, where's the learning in that? It's about engaging with, I've got to therefore engage with people. I've got to coach them through. I've got to find out what is actually going on here. I've got to praise them. Brilliant. That's a really interesting thing. Let's go and have a look at this. That is what HROs do. So it's about then the competence of the people again. Yes, the language you use. Words build worlds. Language is all powerful, all powerful. Choose your language carefully and align it with your stated aims.
Okay, and sort of leading on from that is then it's about leveraging employee expertise. You spoke a lot about sort of the level of expertise within an organisation. So how do you actually leverage that employee expertise to build engagement so that they actually feed into the process and feel part of the process?
Again, there's lots of things that can be done, but the principles are simple, and simple isn't easy though, but they are simple. I mean, if you invite people to participate in something and you praise and reward them for that participation, in my experience, the vast majority of people are delighted to be involved in decision making, and in fact take pride and embrace opportunities to be involved. You know, you heard about Toyota, you know, it's none of your business, just get on with it. If that's your culture, then you won't get any involvement. So, you know, employee participation starts with senior leadership. I know of no real effective safety intervention program, whatever, that doesn't have a bedrock of frontline employee involvement. So, but it's got to start with a mental model vision of it's the people at the sharp end who know what are going on, and we value that technical skill, and we need to tell them that, and we need to build systems that encourage that and foster that and reward that. And those are the emergent properties we need to get, and we need to use words and language very carefully to get that.
Yeah, thank you. And then another question is, how do I actually sell this to my C-suite? This new way of thinking.
It's a great question. Please do not go in and start talking about, let's be honest here, if I may, the language of senior leadership is business performance, money, productivity. This is immediately what is, the Paul Alcoas of the world are fairly rare, not completely, not out there. You find them, but relatively rare. Let's be honest. When push comes to shove, senior leadership is about, we need to perform here. So and that's why I was careful in those case studies to demonstrate to you, there's a really good positive message here, which is to say, world-class organizations like Toyota, like Alcoa, have achieved preeminent market leadership through safety. They've done it through safety. They've done it through a relentless focus on the positive, not just what's going wrong, accidents and incidents, but what are the positive capacities we need to build in order to get this brilliant level of safety performance. And if we do that, and we're truly committed to that, we're going to get brilliant levels of safety, but we're also going to get commercial success as well. The two, they're linked. Ultimately, I know people say, oh, well, there are times when productivity and safety are in conflict. It's to do with time frame. If you take like here today or maybe tomorrow next week, then maybe that's true. But in the longer term, it's not true. And I know certain people are only around for certain, but that then comes back to the mindset. If we really want to be lasting success here, there actually is no conflict, because ultimately, if we don't get this right from a safety perspective, it's going to kill people, it's going to maim people, and it's going to kill the organization too.
Okay, thank you. And then another question is talking about the links between HRO and resilience, and whether that's at an organizational level, or is it actually at a personal level in terms of employee?
They are inextricably linked. The concept of resilience is inextricably entwined into HRO principles. Many different terms of use. You possibly all heard of human performance or human and organizational performance, HOP. It's all pointing to the same set of principles, but resilience sits very much within there. And resilience sits at different levels. It definitely sits at an organizational level. You can think of it as your hierarchy of controls. You can look at work systems to design out, get rid, eliminate, and control human-related, so this is called user-centered design or UX design, looking to design systems for the people that you're going to use them, not just for the production process, but the people who've got, the people working in the factory. So UX design can go a long way to build in resilience. Just simple things like, we've got a control room and we've got a staffing level of 4 people. I know what, we could save ourselves a ton of money if we came down to 3 people or 2 people or even 1 person. Is that a good idea? Think back to the steam boiler. What's the level of human performance resilience in there? Where's the safe limit there? And how close are we getting to that if we go down to 1 or 2? Do you have people in your organization that have got the skills and capabilities to look at that from a UX design, human performance design standpoint? So resilience definitely sits at the organization level, but it also sits at the individual level too. So, you know, think about the miracle on the Hudson, Sullenberg landing that United Airlines plane on. That was a supreme example of resilience at the individual level, the ability to be able to respond and learn at the moment of doing, and to make critical decisions very, very quickly. So that relies on soft and technical skills that you give your people to identify issues, to make really good decisions. So that comes back to situational awareness and situational awareness-based skills. So it's both at the individual and the organisation, in my opinion.
And I think what you're also saying there is actually people knowing their people as well, knowing the people that are working for them.
Absolutely. So it's come back to deference to expertise. Who are our experts and what makes them an expert, and who in fact are not our experts, and how do we get the expertise out of that person's head into these people's heads? And increasingly, you can't wait 10 years, 20 years to become expert. You've got to short circuit that process down to a few weeks or months. You've got to be able to do it quickly. And again, HROs are brilliant at knowing what is the technical expertise that makes our system safe at the individual level, and how do we train for it and build that really quickly.
Okay, thank you. I'm just checking to see if we've got any more questions. We've had some great questions,
by the way. Thank you very much.
No, I think those are all the questions that are going to be asked this afternoon. So it just really leaves me to say thank you so much, Ian, for sharing your knowledge with us today. It's been really thought-provoking and interesting. Thanks to everybody that's joined us as well. The recording of the webinar will be on the IIRSM Resource Hub probably tomorrow, so you'll be able to recap and follow up on anything in your own time. So I think we'll end the webinar there. Thank you ever so much again, Ian. Thank you for attending. We hope to see you again very shortly. Thanks a lot then. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.